Research focuses on creative computational systems, multimodal media content, and facilities design. Our years of experience in digital media research, our years of experience in digital media research led to the creation of the Digital Media Innovation Program, and that culminated with the Allosphere, which is, as probably all of you know, a 3-story high metal sphere inside an echo-free cube designed for immersive, interactive, scientific and artistic investigation of multi-dimensional data sets. You can search at the UCSB site. There's a page dedicated to the Allosphere. It's very impressive. I advise everyone that doesn't know to look into it. And artistically, the Allosphere is an instrument for the creation and performance of new works and the development of new modes and genres of expression and forms of immersion-based entertainment. So, JoAnn, we are very pleased and honored to have you with us. So the time is yours.
Thank you so much, Joao. I can't believe that you had to say all that stuff, but that was a wonderful introduction. So I'll begin, and I'm pleased, to be here at the Corwin lecture in order to discuss my research, composing and performing complex systems in any field of research by using the model of music composition and performance. First of all, what is a complex system? It's an arrangement of a great number of related but various elements and intricate relationships and interconnections. And complex systems typically have input from many sources and are highly changeable. They're difficult to model and predict. Components of a complex system may appear to act spontaneously, such that predicting the outcome of the complete system at any given point of time may be difficult, if not impossible. I think in this respect, all of those of you that are here could say that composing a piece of music is very analogous to building a complex system. The system changes and unfolds over time at many different levels of temporal and spatial dimensions, and the outcome of the system may not be predictable at various stages of composing the work. So music, consists of various mathematical languages that build complex systems, just like physics, chemistry, biology, as well as economics, and society and culture. So if this is the case, can one use the model of music composition and performance in building a computational platform for composing and performing complex systems in any field of research? So in this lecture, I'll discuss how I moved from building complex systems through music composition and performance in the analog domain, using the orchestra and performers as the platform and the musical score as the program in order to build complex systems in the analog domain, and how I moved over the 37 years from that to using the computer as a computational instrument as the platform and human-computer interaction devices with researchers/performers performing their software computational language, their mathematical algorithms that are programs that will allow anybody in any field to map complex data through visual, sonic, and interactive representations. So I'll begin by sharing my screen to kind of go through a modicum of works here that I've got up and play some of these works, and start with the first work. On the left-hand side in the PowerPoint, you're going to see one of the last works that I composed that was only for an analog computational system or an analog system, which was for the string orchestra. This was written in 1984. It's a piece called Tachyons, and it's my string orchestra work. It's actually my dissertation that I finished at the Eastman School of Music in 1984. And the tachyons, interestingly enough, is about a particle that could move faster than the speed of light. And it metaphorically is about quantum mechanics. Of course, at the time, I wasn't using quantum mechanics to build my complex systems. I was a atonal composer using non-ordered set and group theoretic elements as my mathematical language to build this complex system. So let's look at the PowerPoint we've got here up on the left, and let's look at these different complex systems that exist in the analog domain. The first on the top is the orchestra, and I liken that to a server clients model. Below that is an ensemble that has no conductor, and that's kind of a client-to-client model. And then we have a pipe organ, which is kind of like our laptop or a server where an individual person is working an individual system. So the work Tachyons was composed in the analog domain using a server clients model. It's a string orchestra work, and here's the program, the score on the right-hand side, and I'll play through about 4 minutes of this 11-minute work. Hopefully I will be able to keep up with the score. It's excerpts of the piece. It's been quite a while since I've been through my own notational scores. So here's a 4-minute excerpt of Tachyons. Okay, so that was the last totally acoustic work that I built in 1984. And it's very interesting that we look at this as, I believe this is definitely a complex system that I was building. I never at one particular point of time knew exactly how the formal structure was going to unfold until I got quite close to the end. And so when we look at how we compose systems, and maybe we can look at Iannis Xenakis's Metastasis, we can understand that typically as composers, we work at these different levels. We work at this level of the foreground, and when we're working with material, we soon jump to a middle ground so that we can decide how we're going to put the piece together. And eventually the background unfolds and we know what the whole form is. Sometimes we might in our mind conceptually say, oh, I'm going to make a sonata, I'm going to make a concerto. So we think we know what the whole form is, but we typically jump to the foreground to get material. And we even know that those forms that certainly seem to be formalized really change over time according to the material of the work. The interesting thing about Xenakis is he was really ahead of his time, and he really starts to speak to multimodality in music, because not only as a composer and as an architect did he work with these spatial large constructs, he in a very early stage working with Le Corbusier actually took this formal musical structure and built a 3D model out of it with this building. This to me was really pointing to multimodality in music, how you visualize sonic information, how you make structure out of it. And he actually made a 3D model out of this structure. So this was really exciting to me. And so as I started to move forward and expanding and beginning to explore on the computer with new sound transformations, using this computer in conjunction with an acoustic instrument, I realized that the computer in and of itself was its own instrument. And I could now use this instrument to actually do things I couldn't do with my analog acoustic instruments. I couldn't transform sound at the intricate level that I wanted to, but I was very perplexed with this whole aspect of non-real time and how I got stymied by using the computer, because I had these beautiful instruments and people could play them in real time. But back then in the early 80s, you know, you really couldn't push these VAX computers in real time. So I was hired here at UCSB in 1984 to build the Center for Research in Electronic Art Technology. And so for the first time now, I had my own platform to start to explore the use of the computer and how I was going to actually interconnect it with the analog world. This was a really important thing for me. My first instrument that I had on the computation platform was this VAX 11750 computer. I spent a lot of time from 1984 to about 1995 exploring electroacoustic works, and that really helped to expand my timbral palette and to try to really bring in different mathematical constructs into my acoustic works and to try to marry the computer with this whole orchestral phenomenon that I had. And so from about 1984 to 1995, it was exploring that compositionally and technically exploring expanding out from the VAX 11750 to integrating this computer with Sun Microsystems. Of course, this still wasn't distributed systems. It wasn't that I was using these brains interconnectedly at these times, but they gave me different options for computing, and there were different things I could do on these computers. And then in the 90s, we had the next computer come out. And for the first time, we had on our home what we had when we had the VAX system in these big computer labs we had on campus. Of course, things had been downgraded. We went down from 49.152 sampling rate and 4 channels of sound to 44.1K and 2 channels, but it was convenient to have these machines in your home. So on this platform, I composed a number of works, and let's just look at a few of these works, maybe hear a couple minutes of these works, and go on to other things as well. The first work I want to show you that I wrote probably in the 90s, early 90s, was my Concerto for Clarinet and Clarinets. And the interesting thing about the Concerto for Clarinet and Clarinets, you can look at the score and you can see that things have really started to change in my writing, in my notation. No more do we have bar lines. I have parts of beats everywhere. The top line is the acoustic clarinet, and the bottom lines are an orchestra of synthetic clarinets. And I used multiphonic sonorities to expand my 12-tone scale to include microtones, because for the first time, I could analyze these multiphonics and I could incorporate these sounds into the work. So we'll just listen to a couple minutes of Concerto for Clarinet and Clarinets. Okay, I'll stop it there so that you could see as I was exploring the instrument. Right now, I've got one monolithic computer that is playing a number of computer-generated synthetic orchestral instruments that are clarinet-type instruments with a live acoustic performer. Again, here we are. The performer is connected to having to sync to a tape, which can be very frustrating to performers. But these were some of the works that I created at this particular time, exploring the palette. I'll play a little bit of another work at this period of time, which is a setting of Ezra Pound's Canto 90. It's called Dream Paths, a walk through Canto 90. And the interesting thing about the Canto 90 is that Ezra Pound uses a number of different languages in his poetic works. He starts with Latin, he has ancient Greek, he's got Chinese pictograms, and it was a way for me to try to incorporate the voice with different synthetic instruments that I was working with, and also a very interesting collection of sampled instruments that I had here, which was called the Icon Collection of Oriental Instruments. And this was pretty unique in that period of time, to be really working with the whole battery of processed sampled sounds and to be able to somehow transform them. It uses a lot with phase vocoder transformations and time scaling. A lot of these sounds that you're going to hear in the beginning are a synthesized string sound that's stretched with these different gongs from the Icon collection. And we'll hear a little bit of the voice. I'll play through a couple minutes of this piece as well. Okay, so I think you get the idea of really where I was at this particular point, probably in the mid 90s. And as I started to move forward and moving from the 90s to the 2000s, and I became chief scientist of digital media of the University of California and started to try to unfold this idea of content driving technology. I was in charge of a multi-million-dollar sponsored research program, and I was partnering the then 9 UC campuses with the three national labs with industry partners to say that Silicon Valley wasn't talking to Hollywood in the 90s, and we really needed to have content drive technology. I funded from the year 1998 to 2003 about $60 million worth of research partnerships among my colleagues in the University of California and industry partners. Worked a lot with David Wessel and funded his Gibson research and his work with Meyer Sound, and worked with other colleagues down at UCSD in transportation, and even my colleagues up in Davis when it dealt with agriculture. And in that time, I was also building the graduate program in media arts and technology and starting to understand that we needed to fuse music, visual arts, computer science, and electrical engineering together in order to create a new field, the field of digital multimedia with content driving technology. So in this time, from about 1998 to about 2007, I built the graduate program in Media Arts and Technology, which was a master's program up until 2007. And also, as chief scientist, was able to bring an interesting building here, one of the California Institutes of Science and Innovation. And the interesting thing is, I was setting out to build a digital media center, and we had a new dean come aboard that wanted to build a Nanosystems Institute. And so, since I was bringing the building to campus, I was approached by the administration and asked if I would build my digital media center in a Nanosystems Institute. And I said, what is a nanosystems and what does it have to do with me? This was about 2001. And my wonderful colleague, Evelyn Hu, who was a photonics researcher, said to me, look, when you defined the field of digital media for the state, you said that there were these 4 core areas of research and a middle layer software you needed to build: display, storage, retrieval and transmission, multimedia networking, and building that middle layer software for digital technologies. I said, yes, right. And she said, do you agree that we've reached the limitation in materials for display? I said, absolutely. She said, storage, retrieval, and transmission. I said, yes. She said, what about networking? I said, of course. She said, shouldn't we be designing a California Nanosystems Institute for new materials for information technology systems? I said, yes, it's crazy. It's forward looking. How are we going to do that? And she said, maybe we'll start at the front end by allowing the artists to work with the scientists in order to be able to visualize their data in new and different ways, and maybe come up with new materials for information technology systems. Well, it was really forward-looking, on the bleeding edge, and I think I still have the wounds to prove that we were definitely on the bleeding edge at that time. So at about 2007, we completed the California Nanosystems Institute. And the last electroacoustic work I wrote was for my colleague, Professor Jill Felber, flutist at the UCSB faculty. And Jill said to me, JoAnn, I want you to write me a piece for computer and performer, and I want synthetic flutes. But she said, I don't want to sync to a computer generated tape, and I don't want to step on a foot pedal and activate sounds from the computer. She said, I want you to make me an interface that will allow me to gesture like I do with an ensemble. And so we set out our first stalwart Allosphere research group in 2007 to build what was the very basic beginning of what I think is the interactive interface of the Allosphere instrument. And it was this little thing right here on the left that you see Jill in front of her. In front of it. It's called the Multimodal Music Stand. The Multimodal Music Stand had an eye, one camera, had an ear, one microphone, and 4 E-field sensors. And with my stalwart first little research group of media arts and technology students, one actually from electrical and computer engineering, PhD, that understood vision recognition, my HCI guys in the mat, my signal processors in the mat, we set out to make a very, very simple, basic language that would allow Jill to cue invisible performers when she was on the stage. First of all, she could look in a direction and it would cause an invisible performer to start. In order not to worry about whether we were going to have failure with a cue, we did multimodal cues. So not only did she look in a particular direction, but she played a certain pitch. She also used proximity to the E-field sensors to allow a triple kind of modal triggering so that we would never have any kind of disambiguities in performance. And that was great because Jill got her haircut a week before we premiered this in Rochester, and the vision recognition kept recognizing her ear as a face. But because we had multimodal cues, the piece always worked. So this is Jill in a rehearsal. First rehearsal, she was able to trigger every instrumentalist to play at the same time. Here's a little bit of Time and Again, which again is a piece for flute and a battery of computer-generated flutes that are synthetic and do certain things. And you'll look at the cues that you'll see, some of them are very subtle and some of them are very dramatic. She'll have cues where she bends down really quickly and that triggers a sound, goes up really quickly, and so forth. We'll listen to a few minutes of this piece as well. Here comes the cues coming up. There was one. There's another cue. And so forth. I'm going to stop this because I want to play about 20 more minutes of videos so that we can have time to have a discussion, and I can answer your questions, or maybe you can answer my questions, because I tell you, things are really out there for all of us in the Allosphere Research Group. So we moved now from 2007, it took me until 2017 to really build out the Allosphere instrument. We've got a distributed computing system that is 14 compute rendering cluster talking to 26 immersive projectors, 54.1 channels of sound, and a whole multi-user device server system that will allow us to connect any device, both wireless and wired, up to the instrument so that we can use this instrument as a performative platform. And here's this instrument. Here it is. I think of the whole CNSI as a big instrument. This is the display, the Allosphere. We've got a large HPC cluster upstairs that eventually the Allosphere 14 compute rendering cluster will talk to this HPC cluster. It is right now with my materials researchers, but my materials researchers are still working in non-real time, even on their HPC cluster. They do their Monte Carlo simulations, they batch them, just like I used to batch sounds in 1984, and then they try to go through all this data. We've currently, with our current NSF grant, got a way that we can cache their data and they can go through their data using AlloLib, our software, visualize it, sonify, and using Tink, our toolkit for interactive computation, which is Python scripting languages in Jupyter notebooks, and they can actually perform their cached data. We're really discovering some interesting things. Eventually, this is where we want to get the whole CNSI. Here, we've got interface instruments. I've got these as the microscopes on the first floor of the CNSI, but they can be any device, of course, that we're interfacing. The data pipeline goes to visualization, also sonification, all sorts of different things. We go to data processing. We go to be able to analyze the data. We go to simulation pipeline. Eventually, we want to be able to do all of these nanoscale simulations in real time once we can reconstruct the HPC cluster to be a real-time interactive GPU computing system, and then go back through the cycle again. This way, what I will do is I will connect the experimentalist directly up to the computational scientist, which is the dilemma I've been in since I started trying to connect the orchestra to the computer. These guys are now where I was in 1984, and I have a plan that maybe will get everybody up to being real-time interactive control. As all of you know that are on this website, this lecture, as composers, as media artists, as performers, that what we do more than anything better is we've got perception, we understand things through our senses, and we work in real time. And this is what these guys need. So here is kind of AlloLib. It's on GitHub. It's for everybody to get. Believe me, it's still a nightmare, but it's getting really, really stable. So the AlloLib software allows for a visual engine, an audio engine, an interactive device server. It's parallelized through something called Cuttlebone. This is all my Allosphere research group has put this together. Carl Yerkes really had built Cuttlebone. My other researchers, my former researchers, and now my new researchers, Dr. Andres Cabrera, brilliant media systems engineer and musician, Dennis Adderton, who's a hardware guy, and all of my graduate student researchers build out this instrument. We create data, through simulation, through sampling real data, we analyze the data, and we perform the data. So right now, what I want to do is play 2 videos for you that are going to show you how we compose and perform quantum mechanics. And the first video I'm going to show is 15 minutes long. It's called Miroi. It's my last composition, media composition that I've done based on the time-dependent Schrodinger equation, splitting a hydrogen-like atom's electron in superposition after 7 years of working with my physicist colleague, Professor Luca Politi. And this was a video that we made for SIGGRAPH. This was performed at SIGGRAPH 2020. I'm going to go into full screen. It's about 15 minutes long, and it's really going to explain, and all my people are going to be able to explain their roles in this particular composing and performing of the work. The nature and behavior of matter and energy on the atomic or subatomic level, quantum physics, lends to its ethereal nature, gossamer wings, those substances that are immutable, however untouchable. To touch the untouchable, to understand and know what is real but cannot be seen, and to experience it, to truly experience immateriality as substance, form, and shape that is dynamic, transformative, and truly alive, constantly changing but continually unchanged. The vibration of waveforms intermingling as one form, one shape, one spirit, into a myriad of forms. This is Miroi. This is the work we give to you.
What would it be like if we could generate, control, and transform this complex information the way that a composer creates and transforms a work of art? If we could use our senses to perceive very complex n-dimensional information intuitively and as second nature? What if we could be immersed in this data and experience it as real-world phenomenon? Imagine a computational platform that is a natural extension of ourselves for processing this complex information, much in the same way composers compose and ensembles perform a piece of music in a concert hall. A truly immersive experience. Could one design a computational framework, vocabulary, and an instrument that could support this immersive, interactive creative process, allowing researchers in different fields to interactively visualize and sonify and perform their data as artists do? Confronted with these questions for the past 37 years, as a composer of complex mathematical systems and a distributed immersive computational platform designer, I and my research group have created a visual, sonic, interactive computational platform based on the artistic process of composition and performance, coupled with structural design, using the best practices of scientific visualization and information visualization for the creation of unique immersive artworks based on the ground truth principles of science, as well as a tool for scientific discovery. Now, this is how Miroi was created. I began my quantum studies in 2008 with physicist Professor Luca Politi and media arts researcher Lance Putnam from my Allosphere research group. We presented our studies in composing elementary wave functions of a hydrogen-like atom and identified several relationships between physical phenomena and the musical composition that helped guide the process. The hydrogen-like atom, which Miroi, the visual sonic composition, is based upon, accurately describes some of the fundamental quantum mechanical phenomena of nature and supplies the composer with a set of well-defined mathematical constraints that can create a wide variety of complex spatio-temporal patterns. We explore the visual sonic appearance of time-dependent combinations of 2 and 3 eigenfunctions of an electron with spin in a hydrogen-like atom, highlighting the resulting symmetries and symmetry changes. In this work, Miroi, innumerable, myriad particles to share the experience of being immersed and interacting with myriads of particles that create currents becoming waveforms, to understand and really experience viscerally the quantum, sharing and interacting with this now. Miroi will take these wave function combinations of the hydrogen-like atom to the highest level of counterpoint, myriads of particles forming waves of light, interactively and immersively visualized and experienced by a shared community who are present and active in a world that they could only experience in an instrument and an environment built solely for unencumbered group user experience in a virtual world. Now, I composed the piece, but that is just the beginning of an uncompleted work. My instrumental ensemble, the Allosphere Research Group, with their expertise in disciplines that make the whole greater than the sum of the parts, brings the piece to life and completes the composing of the work. Let me now turn the presentation over to those of my expert ensemble who will explain their roles in this composition.
My name is Andres Cabrera, and I am the Software Systems Lead at the Allosphere Research Group. I have led the effort to develop the software infrastructure used to compose and generate Miroi. Miroi was written using AlloLib, our open-source C++ application framework that provides facilities for distributed, time-based, and interactive multimedia. It has been designed to simplify portability across the whole gamut of immersive display systems, and through AlloLib, we are able to prototype on laptops and deploy to HMDs and distributed systems like the Allosphere, or all at once, with minimal code changes. This framework is currently being used in artistic and scientific applications through our involvement with the Media Arts and Technology program, the Department of Music, and our collaborations with materials researchers and the Center for Scientific Computing in the California Nanosystems Institute here at UCSB. AlloLib provides support for OpenGL, audio, MIDI, and OSC, and builds on top of that a compositional framework that assists both in interactive prototyping and sketching during development of the system, as well as simple time-based sequencing to realize compositions. By centering on the design around the concept of distributed parameter, a network synchronized data container, we have created a set of preset management, sequencing, and interaction tools that can be controlled and generated from text files, GUI objects, network messages, and programmatic C++ code. The compositional requirements of Miroi drove new development and enhancement of AlloLib.
My name is Kon-Hyun Kim. I'm a student researcher in virtual reality that handles the rendering and physical installation of Miroi and providing immersive visuals in any given environment. Using AlloLib, we create our works to run on any platform and setup. This means that the same code and content could run on a laptop, be shown in a head-mounted display, or be shown in a projection system involving multiple machines and projectors. Miroi, as a spatial and aural piece, was composed using our Allosphere, a full surround VR facility here in UCSB, utilizing its canvas of 4 pi steradian projection and surround audio. In order to provide viewers of SIGGRAPH with similar level of immersion, the physical installation was to be constructed using 6 stereo projectors and surround audio, filling up the view in order to show Miroi in its entirety. The environment was set up in a way so that multiple viewers would collectively feel like they are present in the middle of the virtual space and experience Miroi as it unfolds around them. At the same time, the content could be experienced via an HMD, allowing users to view and move around the virtual space. Now, with the visual set up, we started working on other aspects of the immersive experience using our collective expertise.
Hello, my name is Tim Wood. I'm a PhD student in the Media Arts and Technology program at UCSB and a member of the Allosphere Research Group. My research focuses on full-body interaction in immersive systems. The quality of immersive experience depends greatly on our ability to engage and interact with it in a natural way. In our immersive installation environment, Miroi, we created a tracking system using multiple depth cameras to track user movement. User motion and location in the installation space affects how the piece unfolds, creating opportunities for additional quantum particles to emerge and dissipate in the composition, as well as subtle shifts of the virtual camera's navigation parameters. Dramatic gestures emerge differently than subtle stillness, and quantum particles are generated with varying quantum state parameters. Due to the nature of the current pandemic, our public installation space is not available for interactive engagement. In order to bring a small slice of the experience into your home, we also created a software application for experiencing Miroi on your own computer or VR headset. This application will be available to download on the Miroi website during the conference. Thank you.
My name is Gustavo. I'm a media artist educated as an architect. My role in Miroi is to bring the virtual into the material and the making of virtual atomic structures. My research is in AR, VR, XR, spaces as instruments. I experiment with fabrication models and processes to realize material form. My dissertation topic is titled New Media Architectures. My motivation is to shape spaces, interconnecting all domains, both natural and man-made, as information.
So I'm really proud of my group. They're incredible, incredible researchers, incredible artists, scientists, and engineers. And Tim now has gone on and is a postdoc at UC San Diego in full-bodied interaction and embodied systems. And so I want to show one more video. It's about 6 minutes long, and then hopefully we can open it up for some discussion. And in this next video, I'm going to show you, it's really going to take you on a tour of the Allosphere Instrument. It shows the instrument, how long it's taken me, 37 years to build this system, all of my different research groups that have come together to build this, from thinking of the orchestra as a large multi-user mechanical engineering instrument. You know, we can now build a distributed compute cluster connected to a large multimodal display to take the place of the orchestra instrument, or to use in conjunction with the orchestra instrument, and have researchers perform their data. So let me show this last video that I have for you, and I will be narrating through this video as soon as I can get rid of this guy off of my system and get out the last one. And then hopefully we'll have time for a nice dialogue and you can give me some answers to my questions. Okay, here we go. Okay. So we're located in Ealing's Hall, the California Nanosystems Institute, a building designed to integrate experimental materials research with information technology to create new materials for information technology systems. We're entering the UCSB campus, and the building in the background is Ealing's Hall, the California Nanosystems Institute. We'll now do a virtual fly-through into the Allosphere Instrument. Here now we'll be on the bridge, and we'll go through a virtual representation to the physical bridge. We'll go out of the door and to the top to view that this is really a metal cylinder, not a sphere, because we can't project audio in a sphere without echo. We'll go back inside, and you will see now here artists and scientists and engineers standing inside of an atom watching electron flow, flying through a lattice of atoms, witnessing a new chemical bond, and flying through the cortex of a brain, hearing the blood density levels as music and seeing the tissues as landscapes. This research allows us to be immersed in our simulations as well as real experimental data, mapping many different dimensions on top of one another to view the complete experiment. Our research team is unique. The media artists have expertise in mapping complex data terrains visually and sonically. Our domain researchers understand what is important in their data and work closely with us in mapping this information. And our engineering colleagues build new media systems with content-driving technology. The computational language we are making is based on a suite of mathematical algorithms we are designing to represent features and fields in the data, both static and dynamic. We will now fly through research projects that will take you through a diverse set of applications, from the biological to the materials to the hydrogen atom, ending with experimental data revealing electron spin. In our first research project, AlloBrain, we are flying through the cortex of my colleague's brain. Our narrative here is visual and sonic mapping of real functional MRI brain data. The brain now a world through which we can navigate. This now represents our features in field mathematical language. Using our computational language, we can map the functional MRI data, a rasterized grid of spatial locations, into the visual domain through computational geometries, and texture map the geometries to reveal the brain tissues. Using our library of algorithms for data mining, the intelligent agents, the little rectangles and triangles on the screen, they report information to you sonically, higher blood densities, higher frequencies. We move now from functional MRI data to biogenerative algorithms that create artificial nature. In this research project installation, biogenerative algorithms facilitate our understanding of self-organization and growth, important areas of research in the nanoscale sciences. In this installation, our environment is represented by a dynamically varying fluid dynamic simulation algorithm. The biogenerative algorithms in the ecological system are field agents, mining the data sets and organizing the social colonies by communicating to one another certain information sonically. The insect-like agents interact with the plant-like agents, which exchange energy to the insect-like agents that are then born, find material as food, procreate, and then die. We now move from the biological and macroscopic world down to a lattice of atoms as we fly through a supercomputer simulation of the multi-center hydrogen bond. The bond may be the first step towards new materials for transparent solar cells. The rasterized grid of spatial locations of atoms is plotted to show the features of the lattice. As we navigate through this, we hear certain bonds. We see, first of all, the bonding of 4 blue zinc atoms with 1 white hydrogen atom. The sonic information that you're hearing is the literal mapping of the emission spectrums of oxygen, zinc, and hydrogen into the audio domain. The scientists are beginning to use sound localization to discover bonding locations, as the hydrogen has its own unique sound compared to oxygen and zinc. We now move from the atomic level down to the electron level in 1 single hydrogen atom. This installation involves more complex n-dimensional data flow based on the time-dependent Schrodinger equation in 3D, mapping the superposition of hydrogen's single electron into various orbital paths. We see the mixture of 3 probability wave functions, the streamlines now dynamically varying with the probability current and gradient of the 3 wave functions. In the different solutions to the wave equation, we show the electron in various orbital combinations. This state reveals light emission as the single electron jumps into 2 orbital paths near one another. We have not only visualized the probability currents, but we have also sonified them as well. You can hear the beating effect as a photon is released. The photon released is not visualized, but it is sonified, showing the abilities of multimodal representation. The final project represents the coherent precession of an electron spin. Our colleagues at the Center for Spintronics and Quantum Computation are measuring decoherence of individual electrons in an adjacent lab. Here, the experiment is recreated virtually by simulating the mathematical model. By transposing the measurement into perceivable frequencies, we elucidate the musical nature of quantum information flow. This project serves as a demonstration of the value of applying multimodal representation to the abstraction of quantum computing. These brief examples demonstrate new discoveries in science, art, and engineering that are tied together to create and transform into a new age of math, science, and art. Truly, the Renaissance has returned when the arts and the sciences are one again to unlock and unveil the secrets of the universe. Thank you so much for listening, and I will stop screen share, and hopefully we have time for some questions.
Thank you very much, JoAnn. Well, this was absolutely wonderful. I'm sure people have questions for you, so please feel free to go in and ask questions.
Hello, my name is Mary Me Grant, and I still have no idea what I just saw and heard, but my impression is that you have brought the abstract mathematical nature of quantum physics into the macro scale as a somatic experience. That's just one of the things I think I saw.
Actually, I think you're very right, Mary. A lot of what I'm trying to do is really create a mathematical language that can be visualized and sonified and get as close as possible to the representations. I've worked with my quantum physicists now for 7-8 years, And the one that you saw that is my Miroi is probably the least intuitive to them. The one that you saw in the video that I just showed is the one that's the most intuitive, because we were able to take the time-dependent Schrodinger equation. And I sat down with my physicist and I asked, what is it that you're looking for in your data? Some of my scientists are not visualizers, but some are. And I was working with physicist Professor Luca Politi, who sees visually the representation of the mathematical equation in his mind. And he told me, he said that the electron is guided around the nucleus of the hydrogen-like atom, and it makes currents. And these currents make waves, and that the electron splits and goes into superposition and makes these different waves that kind of cross one another, kind of thinking of waves in an ocean. Of course, now we're in the quantum ocean. And in the one that you saw on the screen, you saw these like little light kind of images, which were the quantum cloud. And then we use these agents, and we give these agents certain assignments. The little rectangles that were floating through the screen on the one quantum mechanics that I showed you on the video you just saw, were these little rectangles that were following the probabilities of currents and gradients of different orbital configurations of the quantum numbers, the NLJJ numbers that they use. And they know certain things that happen when these things combine, and they know what they look like visually in their mind. What was very counterintuitive to them was my piece Miroi, was the ones that I did, and the piece that you can kind of see behind me on the screen. Because what we did there, which was very interesting, is my former student, Lance Putnam, who's now professor at Goldsmith, said, I don't like it when we sonify these little agents as rectangles because they're all jittery. What would happen if we connect them together with a spring and make kind of like a rubber band? And my physicist said, that's not going to be right. You're putting a spring mass equation in the middle of the Schrodinger equation. It's just wrong, okay? And so they started to get these beautiful patterns that unfolded behind me. And I had 3 Nobels on the bridge, and they go, we don't understand this one, but it's beautiful. I said, look, I said, I don't know anything about quantum mechanics, but I have a feeling what we're looking at right now, or we're looking at the cross of these waveforms that you're looking for. And the reason that these patterns are symmetrical and repeat are because of the Schrodinger equation. You don't know exactly where they are. The probability wave function is moving. So my colleague Luca Politi said, I don't think you're right. I think that if we release those agents from the rubber band, we're going to get chaos. So a few years later, we didn't have any more funding for the project, and I was making quantum compositions out of this one that I love so much. And I brought Luca back to premiere the work and to be a composer on stage with me. And the first thing Luca said is, never mind, I don't care about that. We got 2 weeks. I'm going to release the agents from the rubber band. It's going to be chaos. It's just going to be horrible. He released the agents from the rubber band, and we were getting the same patterns unfolding. Oh, they were kind of stretched out, and you could see but you could see the same patterns. And he said, oh my gosh, JoAnn, you might be right. Aha, that's the level of provocation. When a composer that has nothing past Algebra 2 in high school can sit with a quantum physicist, can help them visualize and sonify the data in the way that they see it, and maybe have a different way of looking at it that they never thought of, that gives them new insight to their information. This is my goal right now, to have those kind of dialogues and to bring us together, and also to be able to share with people like you, Mary, and other people like myself that don't know this information and might be able to understand it through our visceral, senses, and not have to be that deep in all of the science. Not that it's not important. Of course, we'll always be in the discipline. We'll always need that depth. But this might be a new form of educational transformation. And that's my goal, to really bring the arts into STEM and to show new ways of using the computational platform. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but you know, I think you're right about what you felt.
I don't want to hog the floor, but I think I see the most important contribution you've made is actually none of the quantum mechanics visualization, but the ability to communicate between the diverse backgrounds and multilinguistic environment of the different disciplines.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%, and that's the idea. Right now, every single one of my scientists will tell you the following thing. They cannot find what they're finding by staying in the discipline. The physicists have to work with the chemists have to work with the biologists, that they have to work with the material scientist. And as my colleague Evelyn Hu said in the year 2000, when we started making this, which we called it multi-lens, a multimedia lexicon for the nanoscale sciences, if we could figure out the visualizations of binding atom to atom, and then go to information flow, and then to information among complex systems. What is the sharing of the circuit cells and the internet? Can we come up with a language which is not dialectic, which isn't words, that describes what we know? When she sits down with her material scientist and her chemist and her biologist and says randomness, noise, and switching, everybody has a different idea of what that means. Can we actually get to the mathematical model, and can we all decide what these terms mean and come up with a new language where we can work together? Because right now, I think all of the disciplines are becoming interdisciplinary. And what's made that happen is the computational platform. The extraction of the Boyd's algorithm from biology to be able to use it in any field for self-organization is really what has brought this idea of interdisciplinarity together. And, you know, I don't know if we're completely right, but, you know, the good thing is we're doing basic research, and you can even publish your failures as you go forward. So for me, it's this wonderful quest that I'm on. The fact that as a composer now I can, you know, work with all these brilliant minds, and I can actually communicate with them kind of. Oh yeah, a lot of them wonder what that crazy composer's doing in the Nanosystems Institute, and does it really mean something to her? But right now in our current NSF grant, we're working with our computational material scientists that are working with Monte Carlo simulations because they're trying to make and understand the sodium ion transport. And we had a real breakthrough a couple of weeks ago when we started to have them be able to go through their Monte Carlo simulations that are cached on the computer in real time and really flow through their data, and not only visualize the atomic movement of this ion through this lattice of metal atoms, but actually sonify these vacancies so that they could hear where they were going. And for the first time, these scientists have gone through thousands of their simulations and have been able to say that these 20 may be right. And that's what's going to cause the experimentalists to work with the computational material scientists, because the experimentalists get upset. They go into their lab and they try a simulation and it doesn't work, and they waste material. So they say the computers don't generate real information. So if I can start to bring these worlds together, you know, just like I did with the orchestra, we all did. Come on, all of you out there that are here, that are composers and are in our field, know that we've tried to bridge the gap between our, you know, experimental platform, which was the orchestra, and the use of the computational platform, and get as close as we can to make the model real. I mean, that's the whole idea of the computational platform. Can we model life? I don't know. I'm 67. Maybe I have 20 more years left on the planet if I'm lucky. But, you know, that's for my future PhDs and my future young ones to decide. But at this point, can I at least make some ground in allowing us to speak to one another, to have this dialogue, and not only to have this dialogue, to bring it out to people? How are we going to bring diversity and equity? The institution is dying. people can't afford to come to the institution anymore. Right now, I just wrote an NSF grant that I hope I land, which is called Smart and Connected Communities. As you can see, I can build the Allosphere any size and shape. Can I bring these portals out to the community? Can I bring the institution right out to the public and let everybody share in this idea and this wonder and talk with one another? I feel that diversity, the strength is different people from fields. Sometimes I'll bring the staff up from the kitchen staff up onto the Allosphere bridge and let them just go into this data. And some of the interesting things that they tell me is really unbelievable. So this is the point of time when we have to realize that each one of us on the planet, we're all equal. We all have something to give, from, you know, the cook to the migrant worker to the Nobel laureate. There's no difference in who we are. Anyway, I can go on and on and on about this, but that's a big goal of mine right now, to kind of be the great equalizer if it's possible. Anyway.
JoAnn. Thank you for your insight.
Hey, how you doing?
JoAnn, I was just going to say, this is wonderful for teaching children about the inside of atoms, isn't it? And
yes,
electrons and I mean, it's the perfect visualization, and to show them how everything comes together, and you need everybody in all parts working together.
This is exactly right, Nancy. And what was so exciting was we took our hydrogen-like atom down to the Moxie Museum and had a 6-month installation. And I had people from the ages of 2 to 92 learning quantum mechanics, because we had a tutorial that talked about the quantum numbers. We had a synthesizer. They would play the quantum numbers and they would see the patterns change. They'd be excited about what they were seeing and hearing, but soon enough they'd come back and go, well, what does it mean? I brought Nobel laureates down there and they were dancing in the room with children that they would have never talked to. For the first time, they could talk to people. And it was just one of the most exciting things that ever happened. And this is my goal. I mean, for all of the wonderful things that you did and all of the teaching that you did in where you were, and and all of the young ones that you gave magic to, right? This is where we're going. And this is why I'm in the institution. I just happen to be a professor above scale. Nobody can fire me because I got tenure. And I can be in one of the most powerful buildings. I get no support. All of the money I bring in on my own. And I'm seeing how long the artists can hang in there in the place where they are, because I truly know we need to be there. And I hope I can convince the administration and the world that I'm right about what we're doing and how this is going to help all of the teachers out there by learning by doing, which was definitely one of Montessori's goals. Absolutely one of Montessori's goals.
And it would be perfect with in the public schools where the children don't get those opportunities to go to.
Right now we're planning on building, if I get this NSF grant, one of them is going in the Computer Science Academy at Santa Barbara High School.
Oh, good.
Okay. One of them is going into the Music and Arts Conservatory of Lana Bodenauer, where all of the children from all of the schools go to learn painting and learn violins. And as Lana said, we need to bring technology into this.
Right.
And then to try to connect to the university. So absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So much. You're welcome, Nancy.
There's another question from Gustavo Rincon, who says, what are your thoughts about the future of artificial intelligence and quantum computing in arts and science research?
That's a very interesting question, Gustavo, and it would be up to you to bring that up. AI is very interesting. Okay, let's put it, since Turing, we've been trying to use the computer for artificial intelligence. And I mean, we're still not there, but technologies are getting more powerful, that at least the machine learning algorithms that we're using can somehow start to bring us to that point. I still think we have a long way to go. I think I certainly won't drive a driverless a self-driving car at this point of time, because I don't know how much I trust the technology, but I do believe that moving in those directions are going to happen, and people are out there doing it right now. As I always caution my students, though, don't pick the newest, brightest bulb on the tree because it's cool and it's neat. There's got to be a reason that you're using machine learning and quantum mechanics in your work. I think one of the most interesting things that I saw use of it was at Sullivan Art Gallery, where there was this engineer who became an 18th century landscape painter. And he actually went back to school to paint landscapes and become an artist on canvas. But he was also an engineer and understood machine learning a lot. But it perplexed him that there were certain colors he just hated and he wouldn't paste in his landscapes. So he started training the computer on all these 18th century landscapes, thousands of them. And there were all these esoteric shapes that were coming up, but soon enough, things kind of looked like a landscape, and there would be a color that he would have never thought to use that was interesting. So he went back to paint it. That to me is a very interesting use of machine learning and using the machine to help push you forward with your creative process. So at any rate, it's going to come, and the more that we understand it, the more it'll be used and the more it'll be part of the computational platform.
Thanks. More questions? We still have a couple minutes.
This is Mary again. While you were speaking, you said something that really struck me as profound. And that was when you were describing this, I believe it was a physicist who had an ability to visualize certain, I think it was molecular bonds. And that visualization is in his one individual mind, but through the Allosphere, you can model that, and he can look at the screen and say, yes, that is what I see, and communicate that.
Absolutely, that's exactly what happened. We had 8 physicists come to the Bridge of the Allosphere with Luca, and they agreed on what they saw. Now, I had one physicist, a Nobel laureate, who's just brilliant, who just is dear to me and a good friend, who said to me, JoAnn, I don't visualize. I don't need to see this. I see the equation and I know what it is. And I said, David, I'm jealous. I wish I understood the math that way. I wish I understood it from your perspective, but I don't. So at least this is as close as I could possibly get to having a conversation with you. And he agreed. So it's very interesting. There are some people that don't need to visualize. They're deep in their discipline, and their language speaks to them alone. And we won't ever take that away, because remember, in trying to do this interdisciplinarity, we're not trying to make a jack of all trades and a master of none. We're trying to bring specialists together to bring a new field. And I think after many years, we will see the young ones evolve into these hybrids. But that's going to take a long time. I can still look at my media arts and technology program, my ones that come in as musicians, as graphics guys, as engineers, either on the graphics or the audio side, and I can still categorize them as that. But they have 2 or 3 other areas of specialization they've learned. I think of it as a heart doctor that knows the whole body, or a lung doctor that knows the whole body. So that's kind of where we're going with the graduate program, Media Arts and Technology, looking to create for the future out there. And also, as Nancy pointed out, look for a new form of education to bring out to everyone.
True. And I only have a BA in mathematics, so I don't have a very deep education, but I have some appreciation of the beautiful aesthetic of mathematics, and it's it seems like impossible to communicate that to people. But yet music is a language that you don't need to have a very deep background to be able to appreciate a musical composition.
I hear you, but it also depends upon the musical composition, because it's very interesting. We train our ears, and there's some very, very complex pieces out there that took me about 20 years to be able to hear and appreciate. So I think it just depends upon what it is. It's the same thing with art. You can see a landscape painting and understand it, but maybe you see an abstract piece of art and you really don't appreciate it for what it really is. So I just think it's these different levels, you know, of understanding, you know, and I think it happens really in every field, to tell you the truth. So it's all very interesting. Anyway.
That is true. It's taken me 20 years to appreciate a tenor voice in opera.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's another question. I mean, the last question comes from Curtis and says, who was your most important inspiration and what did you learn from them?
Oh, well, my most important inspiration, I think, was my mentor at Eastman School of Music, and that was Bob Morris. Bob taught me many things. He taught me how to become a mentor and how to be able to teach people with many different languages, to understand, to hear my students say, what is their voice? And how I can understand them from that side. He also is a very interesting philosopher and is a Buddhist as well. And so I learned a lot about just everything about what we do as composers. Eastman was a pretty rough ride for composition majors, because you're in that kind of make or break level of all of these professionals around you, both musicians and composers. But I learned, I think, to let go and learned that I didn't know whether I was good at what I did or whether I am good at what I did, but to enjoy it and to give the best of my ability. I think that's kind of like what I learned from my mentor.
Thanks a lot, JoAnn. Thanks a lot, everybody. I mean, we're running out of time. Yeah. This was really a beautiful and inspiring presentation, and I'm sure everybody was really impressed with your work. We want to thank you again, JoAnn. We want to thank everybody for joining us. Just a small announcement. We're still not sure when will be our next Corwin talk, because we're waiting still for some confirmation, but for sure, in May 14th, we'll have Ki Yong Chong, a composer from Malaysia, with us. And maybe before that, we will have somebody, but we're still waiting for confirmation. Just be looking for Facebook and other social media, and also the university page for the dates and the people who will be joining us. So once again, JoAnn, thank you very much. Everybody, thank you very much for being with us, and look forward to seeing all of you in our next Corwin talk soon.
Okay, thanks, JoAnn. I appreciate it. Everybody, have a great day, and hopefully I'll have all of you on the bridge of the Allosphere soon, once we're outside of the pandemic. Anyway, everybody take care.